Good evening, everyone. You're all very welcome here in the Alice Perry building in University of Galway, and also welcome to our online attendees on Zoom. My name is Richard Manson. I'm the Director of Sustainability here at the University of Galway. For those attending in person, we're not expecting a fire drill, particularly as there was one earlier today. So if you do hear the fire alarm go off, please note the emergency exit at the back of the room and the door you came in. Please note that the event will be recorded, and we will make available the recording and the slides to all those who are attending in person and online. To those who are attending online, you're very welcome. I think particularly when we talk about sustainable transport, it's important to offer an online or a hybrid option, because sometimes the most sustainable way of travelling is to decide not to travel. Please note for those attending online that we have a Q&A function that my colleague James will be managing. So if you do have any questions throughout the event, please do post in the Q&A rather than in the chat. We do have quite an action-packed agenda, so we mightn't get to all questions, but we will follow up afterwards. So before we start the proceedings, I would like to invite the Deputy President and Registrar of the University, Professor Becky Way, to say a few words.
Thank you, Richard, and agus fáilte agus go le asha. So thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we're delighted to be able to host this event. You may or may not be aware that this week is our SDG week here at University of Galway, so this all fits beautifully together with our work led by Richard and his team in the sustainability office to really kind of shine a spotlight on the sustainable development goals and sustainability in its broader sense within the university. Sustainability is one of our core values as an institution. So again, this is incredibly topical, and of course, bringing expertise to the question of sustainable transport is incredibly topical for anyone who lives in Galway. And so I am looking forward to listening and learning. So I won't speak any longer other than to just once again say welcome. Thank you very much for joining and participating. And again, a big welcome to those who are joining us online as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. And I should note that this event is co-hosted with Engineers Ireland. So we have John O'Connell, the chairperson of the Engineers Ireland West Region, to say a few words. Welcome also.
Hello everyone, you're all very welcome on behalf of Engineers Ireland West Region. I think out of all of our events this year, this is definitely one of the most topical, and it was one of the most well received online. I think everyone that travelled here today can understand the problems Galway is currently facing with transport. And we from Engineers Ireland, and I'm sure everyone else here, look forward to the new ideas we'll discuss tonight and the positive changes we can make. I'm not going to say too much tonight, but I just want to commend Richard Manton on organising a great event, and look forward to the three great speakers tonight. Thanks everyone for coming.
Good. Thanks very much, John. So we'll now move to the main proceedings of the event. We have, I should say, the title of the event is Engineering a Sustainable Transport System for Galway and the West Region. We're absolutely delighted to have four excellent speakers to cover different dimensions of sustainable transport. So our first speaker of the evening is Frank Clancy, who's a Senior Executive Engineer from Galway City Council. So welcome you to the podium, Frank.
Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, my topic this evening is the Galway Transport Strategy, an overview of the strategy. So I'll get right into it. I suppose the first thing is, why is the strategy even needed? And it's obvious enough. I mean, traffic, the first point there really doesn't need any talk about it. The second one, though, is that the population is continuing to grow. So if we keep going on a car-centred design and system, we're not going to be able to, it's only going to get worse. So that's just not going to work in the long term. And bear in mind, this is 2016 when this strategy came out. So that's 8 years ago at this stage. And things have not gotten any better since in terms of car transport. We're still car centric in the main. So just, I suppose, what do we need from the strategy? We just need to improve travel options, and this is both regionally and not just the city now. We're talking about this is a regional thing, so it's for the commuters coming in and out of the city as well, not just inside the city itself. But we also need to, there's a danger that if we just keep going on the current trajectory, we're going to lose out on investment in terms of jobs, which we, is a good city for jobs, and in terms of maybe even students, if they, having that much trouble getting accommodation. And we say if the likes of Limerick or Sligo or somewhere else was just more accessible, we could lose out on that too. And that would be, once you lose those things, it'd be hard to get them back. And like we do have a great thing going in the city, everyone knows that. So it's worth like maintaining. So this is kind of, to my mind, this is a quote from it, and it's the aim. It's a connected city region driven by smarter travel. Now, and it's a city region, so it's not just the city, even though the city is the bit that we're dealing with in Galway City Council. And smarter travel is not one thing either. So I'm going to go through some of the outtakes from the actual document, and this is the actual document itself here in paper version. Just have it there if anyone wants to have a look later on. So yeah, the key elements and the key approach, it has to be multimodal and multidisciplinary. And it is. And then effective is the word there, public consultation, because this is for the people and you have to get buy-in. And when there are issues, you have to deal with them with the people that are affected by them. We have to do that. Otherwise, we're just, we're enforcing something on the people who are going to be benefiting from it. So we can't assume that they want what we design, if you like, as engineers. And another thing is like continually looking at best practice, both nationally and internationally, and looking at other places, even when we're visiting other cities, we're always looking around us and stuff. It's an occupational hazard. So they're the kind of key elements of the strategy itself. Now, I'm just looking at, I'm going through some of the actual, these are some of the figures from the document itself that cover most of the elements of it. So this one here, it gives the city centre access, and this is what it's going to look like. And if you look at it here, you've got the blue, which is that's the cross-city link, which is currently with Clonbord on the oral hearing for the compulsory purchase order. And what that really gives us is a public-only corridor across through the city, from the hospital through Eyre Square and down to Monagisha Cross. So basically during working hours, that's public only. So, and that's why you've got the black, which is the inner city orbital route, which is literally like that, an orbital route. But we've also got a cross city orbital route. This is for private, and these are subject to change in detailed design. But the overall is the overall strategy. Just going on into the bus routes themselves, and if you look at it. When you look at the city centre there, you've got 3 or 4 bus routes, we'll say, in the same route. And the whole idea there is that that's the cross-city link where we're going to be guaranteed of bus travel times. So you're getting almost more like a metro link type thing where you hop on a bus, whichever one comes, there'll be short interval spaces between the buses. And then when you get out to the suburbs, it'll be more, you want to go to where you're going, but to get in and out of the city centre is going to be the quick part. And then the rest will be, more dedicated bus routes, better bus stops, that kind of thing. You've got park and rides shown there as well. That's part of the whole regional part of it. So they're all shown on that. Moving along, this is the N6 ring road in black, and you can see this inner orbital route there in blue. That just gives you an idea of the scale. Now the ring road is, I don't know where it's at the moment. I know it's due to go back to the board again, but the county council, it's Galway County Council that are dealing with that. And there may be people in the room that know a lot more about that than I do, but it's in the strategy. So that's just so you know that. Going on to cycling. Now cycling, and I just pulled out a couple of bits out of it, but the bit in the blue here, which is Galway is suitable for cycling in terms of its size and its topography. But that doesn't mean it's suitable currently for people to cycle, because it needs to be, cycling needs to be safe, and the feeling has to be safe, particularly for vulnerable users, not so much for people who are able and well able to cycle. You need to design for the most vulnerable, basically. In cycling, that's what you have to do, and that's what we're making big attempts to do at the moment. And just the actual cycle network then, and again, it's kind of, it's east, west, north, south, the main areas of population, linking them to the city centre and on out to the either side of town, going from east to west and vice versa. So you've got your primary network, secondary network, and then your feeder links into that. And you've also just got, and I know what we talk about later on, just the schematic of the greenways is shown there. So the Galway Oughterard, and then the east, the coastal greenways. These are not the designs, this is just the kind of the demonstration of it, just that, so that how they link in, and they all will hopefully link in together, and they will link in together. So that's the cycling. And this, I spoke earlier about public consultation, and this is a tool that we use. We use it increasingly in terms of when we're designing a scheme, we use these photo montages. Now, this is a western, the Bohurst Chipon, which is out on the western side of the city. We brought this through planning earlier on this year. It's now at detailed design. And what we find is that these schematics are worth an awful lot more. People don't want to be looking at drawings that engineers produce, general arrangement drawings and cross sections and all that kind of stuff. People want to see what it's going to look like. And with this here, you can actually see that you've got a curb protecting the cyclists from the road, and people can actually identify where exactly they are along the road. So if you're living on that road, you're going to know exactly where that is. These are not just schematic, these are the road itself. And they're very powerful tools in terms of planning, and letting people see what's being designed, so they can input in and have their say in it. Another one, just to show you these, this is the existing, if you're out there now this evening heading for Salt Hill, this is Sea Road and the crescent in front of you, and that's the existing as it is this evening. And in, let's say, about hopefully early next year, this is what it's going to look like. So tightening in the road, use of rain gardens, of sustainable drainage, and just, you can see that using all the extra space. Even if you go back to there, you've got a huge wide junction, which just encourages speed in terms of cars, where when you go to the new one, everything is tightened in, so there's no specific cycle network in this one, but the cars have to slow down. You've got raised tables, you've got all these interventions that slow down the traffic, the vehicular traffic, and makes it safer for everyone concerned. Just some of, to go to the implementation, some of the jobs that have actually been completed at this stage. We've done some cycle lanes a lot out in Dohishka, and on the eastern side, not so much on the western side yet. They're in planning, they haven't come to the site yet. The Eglinton Canal, which is just finished around Christmas time, is from, well, what used to be Warwick's Shop. It's closed now, down as far as the Claddagh Basin. And that really was just using the existing towpaths and just making it safer for cyclists, pedestrians, improving crossings of the roads, all that kind of stuff that just makes everything that bit safer. So people feel safer and they feel more comfortable. And that's what you have to do with cycling. And then Miller's Lane, which is again a shared lane that is now used, it serves, I don't know, you may not know where it is, but it serves quite close to the Western Distributor Road and serves schools. And it's a lane that will hopefully now we can look at continuing it on. It's worked well, and it can be extended and try and have permeability from that lane into the housing estates. Obviously, with the housing estates themselves and the residents, some of them are coming to look for permeability, which is what you want, because you're satisfying their request rather than us saying, well, we want to break a gap into your road. There's things there's unintended things I just put there. Pedestrianisation in Dominic Street is something that was is not in the plan, but it came about from COVID and it's worked. And now it's being run by the businesses down there. And so there's some unintended things that are not in it, but you'll take opportunities when they come along. And I suppose there's a lot of other things that are in the path at the moment. The Crescent is the one, and I showed you there. We're appointing a contractor to that one next week, so we'll hopefully be on site in about another week's time. And we've got other ones at various stages of design. You know, the funder for this is the NTA, and so we work with them. They've got their scheme phases that we work through with them. They approve all the various stages, and obviously they pay for them, so we have to do it. There's other ones there then, obviously, Drogheda and Doher, that was opened last May, just across the way. Cross City Link, I just looked at already. The safe routes to schools, these are ones that are low enough input in terms of cost, but they're big. There's big gains out of them. And it's really about getting kids to kind of feel safe in the last even 500 meters or a kilometre when they're going to school in the morning. So they walk to school or cycle to school. And then they arrive into school having had, you know, a nice walk and a chat with their mates and all this kind of stuff. And it, you know, the feedback is great on that one from the teachers in terms of the kids coming into school ready to go, basically. And there's obviously other things like, you know, even pedestrian crossings, you know, where we've targeted pedestrian crossings. And they help out, but you have to target them at the places that are going to work. Now, obviously, a lot of these jobs will have pedestrian crossings added to them anyway, so we're going to be getting them for free, if you like. But there are other places where we assess them the need and we put in the pedestrian crossings and likes of removing of kissing gates and stuff like that. Just other related works that are not necessarily in strategy, although they're mentioned in it, is the N6 Ring Road and it was shown in the strategy. Again, I'm not sure where that's at, but it is mentioned in the strategy as part of the strategy itself. The Bus Connect is mentioned. Increased commuter trains into Kent Station, which is underway at the moment. Kent Station is redevelopment is live at the minute. Park and ride stations, which are shown on the strategy. Light or ultra-light rail feasibility study, and that's going to be spoken about in a little while. That's not in the strategy, but I know it's on the way. So flood relief schemes, like Corrib Costa is the current scheme for flood relief, and there's some advanced works to improve various locations that they're going to be done anyway. So it's a matter of taking them out from the main body of works and just doing them in advance so you get the benefit early. And then public realm is included throughout in terms of, you know, included in the Cross City Link, their public realm projects. And the other one, I suppose, it isn't in the strategy, but it's vital to the ongoing future of the city is the compact city planning. And this idea, or not the idea, but the 15-minute city. And the Freiburg Charter is one, if you're not aware of it, you should look it up. It's just all about the same thing of building or housing where you're close to transport. So close to rail lines, close to bus lines, close to good transport networks. So yeah, I just thought I'd throw this one in. This is our GIS, and it's been developed in-house. And on the left there, you've got all the various projects, so they can all toggle on and off. The schematic there shows everything on, so it's very crowded. But when you're looking at, you know, scheme by scheme, you can toggle on and off, so you can see what bus routes are close to you. If you're doing a cycle lane, so you know you need to account for bus stops in the cycle lane, and we'd say the likes of the Greenway, the Oughterard Greenway, where that ties in tight to our schemes, so that can all connect up, because these have to connect. Now it's going to take a while, even on the cycle lanes. We have to do them scheme by scheme. But then you're going to be getting to the stage where you just have bits to fill in. So you actually do have your networks. And that's the key to the overall thing. So, Sinead, go to me, Maggie.
Thank you very much, Frank. I should say that we're going to hold questions until after the fourth of the speakers has spoken, and at that point I'll invite the four speakers up to the stage for our panel discussion. Their second speaker is Mert Coleman, who's a chartered engineer with the Gluas for Galway Committee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Frank, as well, for an informative presentation. It's good to see that there was some mention of light rail in the related works. Pleased to see that. However, good evening, everybody. I'll do my best to get through the following in the presentation. Forward to a very light rail, an introduction to Gluas, a brief look back at trams in Galway, population, historic growth and future targets, Galway, a traffic congested city. What do we want and how can we have it? Some examples of light rail feasibility study, and the Minister Ryan's commenced. The tramling and AECOMs and innovation and novel technologies. And Galway is not too small for light rail, and light rail is not too expensive. Urban light rail system, an urban light rail system is an innovative tram technology with adequate capacity for up to 78 passengers and operating at a speed of 90 kilometres an hour. The Gluas interest in light rail was stimulated further by the Coventry Very Light Rail Vehicle and Tram System, complete with innovative world-first technologies and economic installation costs of 11 million per kilometre versus up to 100 million for some cities in the UK. It's battery-powered vehicle that has no overhead wires and is will be autonomous in future. The track is of standard rail and ultra-high performance concrete bed, 300 millimetres deep and prefabricated. There will be no underground service relocation necessary with this, and this is where the major cost saving is in light rail. About Gluas, who are we? We are advocates for light rail for Galway. What do we want? We want a prosperous, vibrant, healthy, low carbon, green city where people can enjoy living, education, working and leisure. How can we have it? We need something transformational, a sustainable transport system for Galway City with connections to Barna and Oughterard. Approximately 150 years ago, Galway had a tram system. It operated between Ear Square and Salt Hill. It was operated by the Galway and Salt Hill Transport Company. It lasted approximately 40 years. It launched in 1879 and terminated in 1918. Its double-decker tram carries 36 people and is drawn by 2 horses. Its single track deck carried 18 people, passengers, and was drawn by 1 horse. The picture you see, the historic picture you see, is of the Galway Industrial School brass band at the launch of the Galway and Salt Hill Tramway in 1879. The population, historic growth and future targets. The graph is quite self-explanatory. It shows the incremental change in the population from 1946 to 2006, and then again from 2006 to 2016. The National Planning Framework targets a population increase to 120,000 by 1940, and the Greater Galway Charter also targets population increase to 250,000 by 2073. These are challenging targets, and there's no way these will be realised if we don't have a transport strategy and transport infrastructure. Galway is the 7th worst city in Europe for car traffic congestion. It is the most congested city in Ireland, and it ranks in the top 4% of 1,000 cities on 5 continents. People in Galway spend approximately 4 to 5 days a year sitting in their car commuting to work. This is chronic, this is tragic, this is terrible, carry on. Why is there too much traffic congestion or so much traffic congestion? The reality is Galway is a victim of its own success, which is a buoyant economy, very buoyant economy with a growing population, but cannot move. It's stultified, it's stalled, it's impeded because it has no traffic infrastructure, no transport infrastructure. Galway City and County are very car dependent. For instance, in County Galway, 71% of workers drive to work, the highest percentage in the country. 88% of the Boston Scientific 5,000 workers travel to work by car. The travel mode of 92% of the people in Barna is by private motor vehicle. Bus travel mode share is only 2% in Barna. The bus will never sort a congestion problem on its own. People do not leave their car for a bus. They will for light rail. Bus, public transport, PT services in Galway are inadequate, totally inadequate. We know that. The taxi driver that drove me to here tonight could only talk about the traffic in Galway. Active travel infrastructure is inadequate. The solution, and I agree with Frank, the solution is an integrated solution. The components are active travel, that is walking, cycling, the bus, road, and VLR, very light rail. Very light rail is the most effective component. It has a public transport modal share of 30% plus, and it has an economic cost of 300 million approximately. The ring road has 8% public transport modal share according to Arabs, and it costs 1 billion. And I can tell you, by the time we have all the submissions and the court cases and the court case in Europe, it probably will be, and that'll be approximately 8 to 10 years' time, and we will have a ring road, I'd say, but it'll be probably something like a children's hospital-esque 2 billion. What do we want? We want a prosperous, vibrant city, a healthy, green, low-carbon city like modern European cities, much less traffic congestion, walking and cycling friendly, sustainable transport system, and sustainable growth to achieve the 240 and the 273 targets. How can we have it? Ambition. Gets very tiring listening to people complaining day in, day out about the traffic congestion in Galway and how long it takes to get from A to B, and waiting for 38 minutes for a bus that sometimes never comes. We need to do something about it. Start talking, talk to the people, your local councillors, your TDs, to the people up in City Hall and the County Council and the Galway Chamber of Commerce. We need transformative change, long-term strategic planning, prioritise investment in active travel and public transport. We need sustainable development, a light rail system linking compact villages around the stops, and transport-orientated development that Frank outlined earlier on. And we need to restore nature. Galway City and Freeburg. It's very interesting to compare Freiburg with Galway City. Freiburg has a population, Freiburg is a model city actually. It has a population of 3 times that of Galway, but a smaller square area. And this, the success of Freiburg is that it has something like 8 lines running across the city, which offer it a density of 3 times that of Galway. And that's because it is light rail, it's compact, and it's sustainable. Galway has none of those things. It's not compact and it's not sustainable. Freiburg is a model city, and it's the most sustainable city in Europe. It's led the traffic renaissance for 20 plus years. It has a network of 5 cross-city tram lines. Its development followed the tram lines. It's powered by 100% green energy. It serves 20 of the 28 districts in Freiburg. 65% of the residents are within walking distance of the tram, and the public transport modal share is 30% plus. It works for 19 hours a day, and at the weekends it works through the nights. Just a few examples of light rail. Galway could be like this. Besançon has a very successful tram system, cost in the order of 17 million per kilometre. It's a density slightly greater than Galway, but an area slightly greater than Galway, but a density roughly around the same. It's a very successful story. It caters for something like 40,000 people per day, but it's so successful they've now ordered an extra 5 trams. The London, Sweden is the newest tramway system in Europe. Great success. It was built at a cost of 22 million per kilometre, and that included infrastructure, street remodelling, and 7 trams and a depot. And if you look at the picture, you'll see that it points out that the building of houses, the development that you see followed the tram line. And that's what trams do. We get regeneration and development. Smaller cities now want light rail systems which are less disruptive to build, are less costly to build, have smaller, lighter trams, have no overhead cables, are zero emissions, battery and hydrogen powered, achieve modal shifts from cars. People will leave their car for light rail because it's efficient, it's fast, you can rely on it, and it's hop on, hop off. They want to achieve a modal shift from cars. Coventry, for instance, is developing a low carbon, affordable, very light tram system with a novel track, and the target capital cost is 11 million euros per kilometre. This is a game changer that makes light rail so it's economic. The innovative shallow track bed. It's manufactured off site. It's ultra high performance, made of ultra high performance concrete. It's inserted into a 300 millimeter deep groove cut out of the road surface. It has no interference with underground services and minimal traffic disruption. Sections of the track can be lifted out if access to underground services become necessary. This is what makes light rail so attractive and so economic. We must decarbonise transport now. The World Meteorological Office issued a red alert in March this year about ocean heat, sea level rise and glacial loss. Transport in Galway City was responsible for approximately 18% of the city's greenhouse gas emissions in 2018. The Climate Action Plan 2024 includes the following KPIs: shift in daily mode share nationality. And I would bring your attention to the public transport. By 2030, we're required to increase to 19% public transport from 8%. However, the Galway Transport Strategy will deliver only 8.1% public transport share by 2039, not 2030, according to the Arab Consulting Engineers in October 2020. Light rail can deliver the public transport mode shift required and a lot more. The geography of Galway City suits light rail. Traffic in Galway is east-west or west-east, and Galway is ideally suited for light rail. It's bounded by the Corrib and the Bay, and has a very short isthmus of 4 bridges. The isthmus is bounded between the bridge next door and Wolfstone Bridge, which is very narrow. However, in Dr. Michael McGettrick, in his role of the city geometry in determining the utility of a small urban light rail and tram system, pointed out that I'll have to read it for you. That he shows a schematic diagram of a tram in Galway City that links the areas with areas of square kilometres with 500 people per square. And the bottom line is this line that you see, this east-west line, this linear line. The bottom line is it will serve 48,000 people, and that's people living within 500 metres of a tram line. Light rail feasibility study. About 6 years ago, a light rail, 24,000 people signed a petition for light rail in Galway. The National Transport Authority has prepared a draft feasibility study of light rail for Galway now. The feasibility study will be published alongside the draft Galway Metropolitan Area Transport Strategy, GMATS. The Gluas Committee anticipates that the feasibility study will find that light rail would be a feasible transport solution for Galway City. A tram service with the initial 8-minute frequency would be appropriate. Potential for AM peak in the range of 1,800 to 3,000 passengers per hour, and potentially daily boardings of 25,000 to 44,000 passengers. Thankfully, the Minister for Transport came down heavily in favour of light rail for Galway. And in an interview on the Irish Examiner, he on the 4th of August, he spoke of the following. He said, "This is a critical crunch for the city of Galway. Does Galway go with the outer orbital motor sprawl model, which is inherently unsustainable in the mind because it's car dependent. It sees a continuation of what's happened in Galway in the last 20 years, and I believe more, which is the worst system in any Irish city, and probably in any European city, where everyone lives on the one side and works on the other side, and you don't have proper transport infrastructure between the two. Now the city executive has always said, oh no, there's no demand for Gluas in Galway. There isn't the numbers to justify it. It's not about numbers, it's about density, it's about the shape and about the size. Density is probably the main criterion. I don't agree with them, actually. Minister Ryan described Galway as a spectacular, beautiful city, but has been ill-served by a badly planned small model of development. He called it the city of cars. Light rail is not too small for light rail, or Galway is not too small for light rail. Please remember, light rail would reduce traffic congestion. Zero emissions light rail would reduce transport GHG emissions. Galway is not too small, and light rail is not too expensive. We want a better, greener, healthier Galway. Be ambitious. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mert, for an excellent presentation. Our next speaker is John Holmes, who's the Technical Director for Transportation at AECOM.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, good evening, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to speak here tonight, Richard, and everyone for organising this. So this evening, I'm just going to take you through the Galway Oughterard Greenway project. Working on this the past number of years. I'll give a quick overview on the project and location. Obviously, many people here in the room will know where it is. Might be people online, so a quick overview on that. Where we are now in terms of the plan and design process. Discussion on our project objectives and key policy behind that. Obviously, we want to tip the hat to SCG this week as well. Constraints and opportunities along the project, the option selection process that we followed, and our sustainability strategy for the scheme. So in terms of the project overview, Galway County Council is the lead local authority on this. We're working in partnership with Galway City Council, and TII in terms of developing the proposed greenway between the Galway City here and the town of Oughterard. The corridor, what we're looking to do is provide a safe and sustainable, healthy modal option for all users. We heard talk about car-centric and everything, and also looking at a recreation facilities to support the local communities along that corridor, starting here in the city, going right out to the town of Oughterard, and the various settlements in between, the likes of Mulcullen, Roscathal and the likes. We also want to provide a project to provide the opportunity to highlight the various, there's a rich cultural heritage along the corridor, and we want to promote the scenic nature of it as well. So in terms of location, you'll see obviously the study area there, quite a large study area. Obviously, we've narrowed that down through a systematic process. We started off with like 23 square kilometres, extending right out to Barna, right down to the city, all the way up along the corridor to Oughterard, and then up into the higher ground on the western side. So in terms of where we are now with the project, so we're undertaking this project in line with TI's project management guidelines. It's the planning and design phases. Phases 0 to 4 are the planning and design. Phase 5 to 7 covers the construction implementation phases. We're currently in phase 3, design environmental evaluation, but just want to give you a little run through in terms of where we've come from on the project. So in autumn of 2021, we commenced the project and produced a strategic assessment report for the project. And that looked at, in terms of strategic fit, its alignment to policy, and then overall investment rationale to the project. Subsequently then to phases 1 and 2, we would have prepared and defined our study area for the scheme, which we initially presented to the public in spring of 2022. Then we could commence, gathering the data in terms of identifying the constraints and opportunities within that study area, the natural constraints, the artificial constraints, touch on them later a wee bit. Subsequent to that, then we developed the potentially feasible options and done a sifting process to, a systematic assessment of these options to select the preferred route for the scheme. Then obviously on the right hand side here, you can see the Greenway Guide process and extract from the Code of Best Practice, which was published back in December of 2021. And in line with our common strategy in the code, there's been extensive stakeholder engagement throughout the process.
And that continues through, our phase 3 design environmental evaluation. So in terms of our project objectives, they're initially developed in phase 0, but they're, built on the main policy at the time, but continuously evolves. There's a massive change in terms of the policy landscape across the island of Ireland, which is good to see in terms of, driving that modal shift and that transition to net zero ultimately. So as part of phase 2, we've done a further review, some minor updates undertaken on the project objectives, and taken on board the likes of the 5S criteria that came out through the code of best practice. That's scenic, sustainable, strategic, substantially segregated, with lots of see and do. Now, in terms of these objectives, and looking again to the likes of the SDGs, we're looking at physical activity here with accessible and social inclusion. We're looking to encourage that increase that physical activity among the local population. That offers various, physical health benefits, but also mental health and well-being as well. From a safety perspective, we're looking to improve the security for vulnerable road users, providing a safe, substantially segregated and attractive route, as Frank would intimated earlier in the Galway Transport Strategy. From a tourism perspective, Galway City, it's a fantastic place for tourists to come. Looking at the data from Paul's Ireland, we have two big tourism hotspot here in Galway City, another big tourism hotspot out in Clifton. But in between, there's that, there's masses of buses, people just travelling in and out. The likes of this Greenway and the onward to the connections to the likes of the Connemara Greenway from Oughterard out to Clifton ultimately, that will provide the opportunity for people to come explore the region and benefit, the local economy here in those various settlements out along the likes of Oughterard and that. From a climate perspective, the project is a great opportunity to support transition to net zero, again, providing that sustainable alternative to private car. On environment, we're looking to reduce the environmental impact of the scheme, but also look at the positives in terms of biodiversity and potential for pollinator corridors along the route. Integration, I think integration has been well covered in Frank's presentation already, but we are looking to integrate with various other modes, particularly here in the university, where we've got the opportunity to tie in with the Bus Connects projects, but also connect into the existing facilities that have been provided down to the Claddagh Basin and the likes. So just moving on in terms of the alignment to key policies. We've a lot of policy that supports the backbone of this scheme from an international and European level. At the top end of that, there we have the UN SDGs. So back in 2015, the UN member states adopted the 2030 agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals. Now that focuses on 17 sustainable development goals aimed at protecting the planet, addressing poverty and promoting prosperity. The objectives of the Galway Oughterard Greenway, they broadly line with the following SDGs there listed in the middle. That is to provide, good health and well-being, affordable and clean energy, industry, innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, and climate action. Obviously, there's a lot of national policy that it also supports, from national planning framework right the way down through National Development Plan, NIFTY, National Sustainability Policy. Touching then on the constraints, we've got the constraints, can be seen as well as opportunities from a greenness perspective, because users want to get to the, nice areas to see views. But we have a lot of constraints in our study area there. You can see the various Natura 2000 sites, the designated sites, be it the Coral, Ross Lake and the likes, and then the various water bodies throughout it as well. Lands and soils, with lots of soft soils, peat and alluviums, and landscape and visual with some high sensitivity receptors. Artificial constraints from an engineering perspective, we've got existing N59. There's a small picture which probably I should have made bigger. You can just see the challenge of cycling along N59. Not a nice place to be. We've got the N6 ring road there that we obviously have to take into consideration in terms of how we cross that at the Coral crossing, and also the recently constructed Mulcullen bypass. On an agronomy perspective, we've got some high sensitivity plots such as equine units and dairy units along the route to be considered. Cultural heritage with various monuments and structures, again a constraint but also an opportunity to open these areas up to bring the public to see. Moving then just on to the opportunities, we're taking license of the 5S criteria. So in terms of lots to see and do, we've got various parks and recreation areas integrated with, community facilities, sporting facilities and the like, right the way through the university here and beyond, up as we travel north towards Oughterard. Scenic, we have various lots, we have fantastic views of the Coral here, we've got Ballycork Loch as we come in around Clunith and Moycullen, and Ross Lake as we move further north as well, providing fantastic scenic views for users. And that, you know, that's all improved the journey quality and the attractiveness of the use. You want to bring people back time and time again. From a strategic perspective, you know, schools and educational facilities, you know, this Greenway, we were working very closely with the university, and we'd like to thank them for the support on the project, you know, and it really is, you know, a game changer here for us to come in through the university and provide that linkage and provide that, you know, opportunity for commuters to get out of the motor vehicle. Also, look, there's opportunities to connect in with businesses and various amenities along the route. Sustainable then, the public transport links and connectivity to existing cycle network, you know, the likes of the urban cycle network for Galway City here through Cycle Connects and the likes. We're looking also then at substantially segregated and shared use, and we want to utilise existing infrastructure. So having, you know, looking at the project through the lens of Nifty, you know, we're looking at the various hierarchies in terms of, you know, the modal hierarchy, yes, which is in top dollar there in terms of active travel, but also in terms of intervention hierarchies in terms of the, you know, optimize, improve aspects of the scheme. We're looking to, you know, sweat assets and get best value for money for taxpayer ultimately. Then development of options. We've gone through, you know, quite a lengthy option selection process. And this, you know, started off, we had our study area, as I mentioned earlier on. Then we had a long list of options. This stage one of our options here. We have about 21 end-to-end options as part of this corridor, or as part of this assessment. So that was called a prelim options assessment that we undertook. Now, subsequent to completing that prelim options assessment, we came up with options, you know, a shortlisted set of options. These were the options emerging for stage 2, the project appraisal matrix. So that's where we undertake further detailed assessment on those shortlisted options, then with the, you know, end game to identify an emerging preferred route corridor. So that was all undertaken and ultimately presented to the public back in June of summer 23. And we've been, I'll just flick on to the next slide then. So this is our emerging preferred route here. Obviously, there's quite wide corridors, but, you know, there's more information on our project website in terms of the evolving design on that front. So in terms of, you know, what we're trying to do, we're focusing on delivering a high quality, accessible, socially inclusive for walking, wheeling and cycling. We want a scenic route with lots to see and do. We're looking to improve safety and security for the users. And we want to provide a hero product for the study area. You know, we talk about the tourism and economic benefits of that. We want to also support then the transition to a zero carbon society through the modal shift. So in terms of the sustainability strategy for the scheme, I just want to touch on, you know, we've developed a sustainability strategy for the project, and I've just noted on top of the screen here, so it's an extract from our Common Future Frontland Commission. You know, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So TII, you know, they use that in terms of their development of their sustainability implementation plan, and they've got the 7 key principles there, which we've taken forward, you know, to develop our plan. You know, which is, you know, ultimately we want to be ambitious, you know, ambitions and future, forward looking. And so in terms of those pillars, you know, we have effective, efficient and effective mobility, safe and resilient networks and services. We want to have a holistic approach. We want to provide end-to-end improvements with that transition to net zero and ultimately create total value for society. Our strategy then, it sets out our visions. You know, we want to design, construct, operate the project, demonstrating good sustainability practices. We've also set out our teams and targets, which are discussed in subsequent slides, and these will further be reviewed through the project lifecycle. So some of the themes here on the screen, we've got 8 key themes. I'm not going to go through them all here at the time, but, you know, we've identified 8, as I say, across decarbonisation, climate change resilience, circular economy, biodiversity, community engagement, health and well-being and safety, connectivity and sustainable procurement. In terms of the health and well-being aspects, you know, we're looking to put health and well-being at the fore of the delivery and operation of the project. We're looking to deliver health and well-being through the construction operation, and we're also looking to design, deliver and operate the project safely, leading by example and incorporating innovative approaches. We also want to prioritise the personal safety of the project employees and ultimately the patrons that will hopefully use this in the future. Looking at from a sustainable procurement perspective, you know, creating that total value for society principle. We're looking to integrate sustainability into the project's procurement processes, encouraging to include local businesses and SMEs to engage in the tendering opportunities in the future. So in terms of the sustainable opportunities, look, there's a non-exhaustive list here, and this is something that's just, it's constantly been added to, but I've just taken a couple of topics here around carbon baseline, reuse, recycled materials, floating construction, drainage, bridges and structures. So in terms of, we take just say, for example, bridges and structures, we are looking to use, existing bridge foundations and substructures where possible along the route. Some of the route, not all of the route, utilizes some of the former rail line out there. And, that provides, a heritage piece, a sense of place and well-being, for people using it, a sense of community and pride. So we're also looking as well, where appropriate, to use, natural timber structures should be prepared over steel or concrete from an embodied carbon perspective. But look, that detail is to be worked out as the project works its way through the life cycle. And, the relevant target, we have to have targets here. So look, in terms of that, we're looking to achieve a reduction in overall carbon emissions relevant to the prelim design baseline. So, floating construction, some of the people here are familiar enough with it. We are looking, I suppose, we mentioned earlier in terms of constraints around soil and geology and peak and alluviums out there. We are looking for consideration of no-dig solutions. So as part of our prelim design environmental evaluation, we've done some early peak probing, and we'll be following up that with some further investigations to, to try and really nail down where we can have floating construction, minimise the dig of material, minimise that embodied carbon and the ultimate product for the scheme. In terms of that target, look, we're looking at 70% of inert construction demolition waste streams to be managed using circular economy principles, including recycling for direct use. So, yeah, that's everything from me. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. So our final speaker then is Dr. Myra Lydon, who's a lecturer here in the School of Engineering at the University of Galway.
Hi, everyone. I wish my research was focused on solving the congestion issues in Galway, but it isn't. Transport research in Ireland is massively underfunded, so we try to find our way in through other engineering calls to come up with solutions that we can apply to transport network. So for me, my research initially started out about building digital solutions to assess and monitor our aging infrastructure and to look at how we can extend the safe working life of deterioration bridges. And the way that it was applied was, imagine if you had a standard paper-based assessment or a computer-based assessment that was done on a bridge structure that deemed it unfit for purpose. We would go out and instrument the bridge and do real-time load assessments to measure if there was any hidden strengths in there that we could make use of, or if there was hidden weaknesses that actually meant the bridge was more critical than what the initial assessment decided. So to do these projects, we probably got, they were done across about £5 million in UK research funding. And ultimately it led to this system that was focused on really, really early damage detection, so that we would know, be able to detect damage in a bridge before the engineer can see it, and then intervene in a really cost-effective means so that we can slow that down and make our infrastructure last longer. And we developed it on the real road network testing bridges. And so we went back then to the UK infrastructure owners and we said, look what we've developed, it's amazing. Like, we can tell you that where a defect is going to come on your bridge before you can even see it. And they came back to us and said that they didn't care, because all of their bridges are already damaged and they don't know how to manage them, how to target repairs, how to get the most out of their bridges and slow down the damage that's already there. So we came back to the drawing board and we looked at all of the information that was held on bridges, and this was done in Northern Ireland as a case study. And actually there we were really lucky because all the road network is managed by one organisation called the Department for Infrastructure, and so they manage the strategic road network, the rural road network, everything within that, and also all the rivers network. So everything combines into this really under the umbrella of this lovely organisation, but which seems, when I present it now, like the most forward thinking way to approach the management of our infrastructure. But actually it was the result of a load of different departments coming together over time. And when you look deeper underneath, everything was still very siloed and not connected. So we went in to see if we could pull all that data out and structure it and apply data analytics methods to be able to predict what was going to happen in the future, how different systems were going to interact with each other, and how we can make better decisions to make the infrastructure safer. And my area is bridges. So the one thing, the easy match for us was that bridge risk is increased by extreme climate events like floods. So what we did was we structured all the bridge data so that we could find out where were the most vulnerable structures based on their type, their function and their age, and also different condition deterioration patterns over time. And then we layered that in with flood prediction models to know where were the vulnerable areas, where we can apply long-term adaptation measures. And then we also pulled in data from live river gauging stations so that we can see when there's big changes in the river flow, how that then can impact the long-term performance of a bridge and generate like early warning and triggers. So for us, because that big risk that we identified looking at all of the data was bridge scour, which is when the riverbed erodes due to high flow events. So it's the #1 cause of bridge collapse globally. It was the cause of the Malahide Bridge collapse. And what can happen is that scour where the riverbed erodes happens in a high flow event. But then when the flow slows down and the river comes back to its normal low flow state, that hole, the scour hole below the foundation, can refill back in. And so then based on an engineering inspection, where really they're just doing a visual check, they can miss it. And it means then that it's masked and it causes further risk. So we developed this system that we install at the bridges. In an ideal world, that system would link to your bridge management system, and we would cluster bridges across the network where 1 or 2 instrumented bridges can provide an early warning of what's happening. So this is just a demo of where we did it. So imagine, if I go back a slide, so here's our overall landing screen, and we can see here a dot has gone red, so that means there's an alert scour has happened at a bridge. And then we go in and look closer here at where that scour has happened. So I've selected this one bridge. And now I want to look at other bridges I've selected here in the northern region that might also be affected. And now I've selected bridges with the same function as that bridge, bridges with the same construction type, and bridges with the same number of spans. And then the next stage is to filter bridges on that same river with the same flow conditions, so that we can trigger inspections and support bridge managers in assuring the safety of bridges. Okay, and that's great when you've got loads of money to instrument bridges on the strategic road network, but in Ireland we don't. And there are approximately 30,000 road bridges on the island of Ireland, and 70% of those are masonry arches, which were built either between 100 and 800 years ago. So the majority of those bridges are in rural settings. They're short span bridges, and they don't come into any of these greater national transport strategies. But what can happen is those bridges can form vital links to rural communities. And if they're not invested in and maintained, then it means that those communities can become vulnerable and lose access to emergency services, hospitals, education, and employment. So in order to address this issue and move away from, the purely engineering solution to bridge management, we wrote this proposal, Embrace. And again, this was like a backdoor into getting transport funding from another project. So FFI released a call that was called Communities Challenge, and it was about sustainable communities. And we made them a story compelling enough that they believed bridges and on the rural road network were critical for our rural communities. And the way that the funding was done was a little bit different. So normally when we apply for research funding, we have this big blue skies idea that we think is going to solve everything. And the idea has to sound really shiny, really brilliant, really new. And then they say, okay, we'll fund it, and it goes ahead and you do the research and nothing might ever happen with it. With this research, they said, identify a challenge and come up with a light touch proposed solution. So our challenge was that rural communities are disproportionately impacted by losses in the transport network. And then we had to go and justify that challenge and show, validate it basically, and show that it was a real challenge. And the way that they encouraged you to do that was they staged the funding. So there were 15 teams funded in this initial concept phase where they gave us €50,000 to go out and do stakeholder engagement across every single person who might be interested in the challenge you've identified. And then after 6 months, you can progress onto the seed phase, which is worth 200,000, and that's where we are now. And that's about, again, working with stakeholders to develop this problem solution fit and test a proof of concept. And then our next phase, which we hope we'll get into, is the grow phase, where you actually develop a prototype. So I'll tell you a bit about what we're, the solution we came up with. So to come up with the solution first, we did this whole stakeholder engagement kind of matrix, and we said, who are all of the people who might be interested in bridges in rural Ireland? And so we went to local authorities, Transport Infrastructure Ireland, the RMO, who developed systems that help local authorities make decisions on their investment, the Department for Transport, the National Transport Authority, and then some consultancies and other universities. And when we did our stakeholder engagement, we decided who were the people that had maximum influence and maximum interest. And they were the ones that we needed to manage very closely. And then there was kind of different criteria for what we did with the other groups down in that matrix. Okay, and so our idea was that we came up with this, it's called a vulnerability score, and that we would apply a vulnerability score to every bridge in rural regions. And what it is imagine, now this map isn't like very representative because obviously it has a motorway on it. So imagine these are all tiny little rural roads. And here is a hospital, okay? So we look at that hospital, and now we apply this accessibility score to all of the small populated areas around that hospital. And you can see there that it's green, so that hospital is very accessible to all of those people. And then as you move further away from the hospital, it becomes less accessible. And there are cut-off points in what we say is accessible and acceptable and what isn't. But now if you look within the network, and if you take out a bridge and close that off, now it means all of those people can no longer access that emergency service. Or that hospital. So what we want to do is be able to map that onto the rural road network for Ireland and say how critical different bridges were. And so what it looks at is the accessibility before disruption and then the accessibility after disruption. And we want to look at hospitals, schools, emergency services in, don't know what that is, maybe employment? Gardanisation, it's gardanisation. And then that's employment. Okay, so to do it, we wanted to be able to develop our tool, not just notionally, but pick a case study area. And because we're based in Galway and I live in Oughterard and our rural road network is very underinvested in, we picked Connemara. So what we did was we went to Galway County Council and asked them would they support us, and they gave us all their bridge management data that they had. And then we use GIS to put that on a map, and then we bring the census data in to look at the populations in each area, and we look at where the primary schools are, and we look at where we predict the routes to primary schools would be from set houses. And then also secondary schools repeated for GP, hospitals, and employment, again, based on the census data. And then the idea is that we build a score for each bridge, and it allows bridge owners to prioritise their investment. Or if they find an area where they can't invest, then they put a plan in place if it's particularly vulnerable. And what we found from our stakeholder engagement is that not only is this useful for the management of bridges, but also that across Ireland, about 60% of our bridges are actually unknown assets. So we don't even know where they are, let alone what condition they're in. So they said that we could also use this tool to identify vulnerable communities and look at the road network in that area and assess its condition to make sure that it's not at risk. And now I'll talk a little bit about our transport teaching. I've got a timer on. Richard, I don't know, is okay, 2 minutes. Okay, to talk about our transport teaching. Okay, so we teach transport across 3 modules. This one happens, CE344 happens in 3rd year, and it's a very light introduction to transport, to design of transport systems. Transport and Infrastructure 2 then moves on to the more advanced intelligent transport systems, active travel, and how we come up with all those bigger grand challenge solutions. And then our integrated design project always has an element of transport in it. We've done an Oughterard bypass, did the Mycullen bypass previously, and this year we're looking at developing a velodrome and associated sports facilities somewhere around Galway with a fully integrated transport system. Okay, so one of the assignments that we did with the students was we've really changed over the last number of years how we teach transport in Galway, and it's moved away from all those engineering solutions to try and integrate more meaningful and like solutions that can contribute to our challenges. So one of the things that I do is this active travel assignment. So we show our students what the active travel stats are for University of Galway. You can see there 67% of staff travel by car and only 14% walk, 11% bicycle. The data isn't great. So we say to the students, imagine, first of all, what are all your challenges? Why don't people use active travel on campus? And that's what's happening here, where everyone is writing on a post-it, you know, why they don't use active travel. And this big bit here in the middle is about infrastructure. This big bit over here, so the challenges are at the top, solutions are at the bottom. So there's loads of challenges around infrastructure, around lack of knowledge and information, public transport, and then over here, that big blob is about the weather. And how we can, not many solutions for that down there, you can see. And then the students come up with all of these innovative solutions, and we try to get them to think outside the box and say there's no limitations. Don't think about funding, don't think about implementation, any of that, just come up with whatever you can. And then last year what we did was we asked those students to enter their ideas into the national transport competition on smarter student travel. And we had 11 entries, and of the 11 entries, 6 made it to the finalists. And we had 2 first place winners and 1 third place winner. And that was overall across Ireland, there were over 160 entries. So we did outstandingly good. Well done to our students in the audience. So these are some of the posters. So the first idea was shading the bridge because the rain. And then Green Wheels electric bike scheme, where all the energy would be generated on campus and students would have free access to these electric bikes. Again, a college-owned bike scheme where on campus, all the bikes were provided and serviced by the university, and students could use them freely on campus and to student accommodation. This one was about the Student Link, where they developed alternative bus routes for not so much park and ride, but from student accommodation, and said that they would come to this one point that we'd repurpose one of the car parks on campus and have like lovely huts where there's coffee shops and areas where students can hang out while they wait for their bus to come and pick them up and drop them off. College carpool was about, they did, all of the students created a survey together to understand why people don't carpool. And so they came up with ideas of what would encourage it and how we could facilitate it on campus. And then dry all day was how we would, and like now typical today is the most gorgeous day, but usually it's raining. And so this was about having these dryer huts outside all our main buildings where the students could come in and be dry in, I think, 3 minutes. Yeah, in 3 minutes. And 5 or 6 students could sit in a hut, and again, it would be a place where they could socialise and talk before their lectures. So well done to all our students who participated in that. And then this is just, so our new lab bit that we're doing in transport teaching is about the velodrome. And one of the key things of that is that it's to use here, it has to be required to host events for both able-bodied athletes and those with physical impairments. So we want the students to consider universal design, accessibility within the facility and get into the facility, so to try and minimise the use of private car use. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Myra, and thank you for 4 speakers. Okay, look, thanks very much for everyone for coming. We do one more piece of business that I think is really, for me, the highlight of the evening, and that's presenting 2 student awards that Myra referred to in her presentation. So these are the NTA Smarter Travel Student Awards, in which University of Galway was delighted to take home two of the awards as well as a third place. So I would ask our student winners to come up to the front, and we'll have Myra and John from Engineers Ireland to present them. So I'll just call out the names. So the first prize in the Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship category went to the Dry All Day team. The Dry All Day team was Caoimhe Kelleher, Jessica O'Sullivan, Aidan McLean, and Frankie McHugh. The Dry All Day is a concept to install body dryers similar to those found in theme parks at the entrances to buildings around campus. Then the other student winners, again, this was a first place in the digital and concept design categories. So this went to the college carpool team of Harry Kavanagh, Martin Carr, Dara O'Callaghan, and Conor Brown. The college carpool is an idea for a carpooling scheme based on designated parking and ID card scanning.